Buddy, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'd like to go through my collection of iron horseshoe exercises and talk about the history. Let's talk about the history first. It's also known as the German iron horseshoe muscle builder. And this was a piece of equipment developed in, I would say, the early Bronze Era actually, and throughout the Silver Era, the copies were made after that, but I'll get to that later. And mainly it was used as a developer for strength. It also developed muscular size in the arms and shoulders and upper body in general, the back, etc. Worked the abdominals because of the amount of stabilization you had to do to pull it apart. But I'll get to that later. The most important thing was that it was a piece of equipment that was used for developing strength, particularly in the joints, the tendons and ligaments. And we're talking the hands, the wrists, the fingers, the arms, and the shoulders. And the reason was for the use of this particular piece of equipment was that it was very useful for developing strength for the strength feat of breaking iron horseshoes, like the real horseshoe that a horse would actually wear. It was a strength feat of the past. Strong men not just lifted heavy odd things and performed bent presses, but these guys would break and bend nails, break and bend horseshoes, break and bend pieces of iron bars, etc. And so the iron horseshoe exerciser was excellent at developing strength, as I said, strength in the joints, the weak links. We're talking about tendons and ligaments. And by developing the power necessary to perform this type of exercise, you could then perform strength feats such as the ones I mentioned: breaking horseshoes, breaking and bending nails, iron, lifting heavy objects. Of course, this would also translate into your lifting form, because having the ability to bend iron really gave you a lot of strength. Now, if I talk about the history of the iron horseshoe, I just want to show you an image because I actually don't own the original horseshoe, but the original horseshoe was actually from Don Athaldo. Don Athaldo was a strongman from the Bronze Era, and he developed the original iron horseshoe exerciser. And it actually had, as you can see here, I'll even zoom in on my iPad here, this vertical spring, so that if I was to imagine that I was holding it in my hands, if I was to pull this apart, these two pieces of metal that are attached to the spring would compress the spring and provide resistance, if you can imagine, right? You're just trying to pull this apart. So this was the original iron horseshoe. Very hard to find. I've seen one on eBay for $1,500 US. Yeah, a good chance that I will never be able to afford or ever even see one in real life. But that was the original iron horseshoe. Now, George F Jowett, I love the guy. He was a real legend of the strongman era, but like many others who were successful in that time, they copied many others. I mean, Eugene Sandow even copied his predecessors. Now, the second iron horseshoe in history that came out was the George F Jowett iron horseshoe, and I actually sell the course online on my website www.goldenerabookworm.com. However, it's no good to you unless you actually own an iron horseshoe like I do, which I'll get to later. But the original iron horseshoe that George F Jowett develops, we're talking about now the second iron horseshoe in history, was literally the same as this one from York, except that it had no chain, right? And so again, you would grab it by the ends and pull it apart as I'm trying there, right? And of course, it's easier when you remove the spring. So it's adjustable in that you can remove a spring. You simply just unhook it. I'm not going to do that. And then you'd only have one spring, work with the one spring. And then when you got stronger, you'd attach a second spring. And if you're pretty psycho, I guess you'd start putting in more bolts and putting more springs. Now, later on, York, of course, copied George F Jowett after he put his patent. I mean, his at least was different to the original Don Athaldo horseshoe, but York copied the design of George F Jowett, as did Weider, and even Reg Park. Reg Park also came out with an iron horseshoe, and if you actually own any of his magazine, Reg Park Journal, you'll see that he's often advertising the iron horseshoe in his magazine as well. Now, I have to admit, because I don't own the Don Athaldo horseshoe, the only one that I own from I guess, no, not the only one, I own a York one, and I can compare it to the Weider one, which I've already shown you, but I'll show you again and actually open the box for you. I only just received it, so in a way this is a what's in the mail video as well. But if we look at the original Weider iron horseshoe, hang on, I'll just get this out of the way. We can actually see, I hate to say it, the box is wonderful. I mean, we've got here, I forgot this guy's name already. I think it's Yvonne Brunet, I think his name is. But if we actually look at the horseshoe from Weider, well, you can see how inferior it is. It's actually made of a hollow material. It is not full metal as is the one from York. It's got great handles, and yeah, it provides some resistance, but I tell you, it is nothing in comparison to the one developed by York. I mean, this one's really easy. I'm doing it sideways, and that way is much easier to pull apart. So you can see that the Weider one, similar in design, but the only difference was that it's actually really cheap pipe, was inferior in design to the one developed by Reg Park, which is basically a copy of the York, which was also a copy of George F. Jowett's original design. So that's a little short history of the iron shoe. I love the box from Weider. I mean, Weider was excellent at marketing, was an excellent businessman. And I mean, you look at this box and like, damn, it's so retro, it's so cool, right? And it is, it's great. I love it. I love it. Now, let me talk a little bit more about there's my notes. You can see I don't just remember all of this. Let me talk more about the iron horseshoe. All of these guys, so we're talking about George F. Jowett. Actually, I didn't even know if Don Athaldo came out with a course. I've never seen it, but I've seen, as you can see, the original image. But I know that York, Weider, and George F. Jowett all came out with courses. I already said that these are difficult to find. You can find the Weider one. It's in the He-Man bodybuilding course, but even that's a little difficult to find, but you can find copies on eBay. But the original course from George F. Jowett, which I believe is the best, again, is found on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, you would only need it if you actually own a real iron horseshoe for it to be of any use to you. And fortunately, though, the iron horseshoe, they're not just relics of the past. You can actually purchase one. And if you are an aspiring strongman or a person that works on the very lost art of performing strength feats such as bending nails, bending horseshoes, etc. For example, if you are also an arm wrestler, I would highly recommend purchasing an iron horseshoe. You can actually get them. They're still available from Austria. There is one seller called Robert Baraban. Robert Baraban. I'll even spell that for you in my book, really nice and big for you. And I'll even show you on my iPad his website. I don't earn any money from this. I'm just interested in keeping the history of the iron horseshoe, the art of the iron horseshoe exercising alive. That's his name, Robert Baraban. And his website is actually shop.handgripper.net. So let me just quickly show you on my iPad his website. I'll quickly get it up because I know that it's here. So the only one available online, if I can quickly find it, and if I can't, all I'll simply do, I probably already scrolled past it. No, I didn't. Let me have a look for you quickly. Robert Baraban, and I should be able to find it straight away. Horseshoe. That's the one. That's the one. So if you visit his website, you'll be able to purchase his own version of the iron horseshoe, and you can actually place up to, from what I understand, 7 springs on this one, unlike the original one from Park, York or Jowett, which you can only put 2 springs, unless of course you drill some holes, as I mentioned earlier, and put some more springs on it, bolt some more on. But you can still purchase it. It's quite expensive, as you can see. It's US $300, but you'd only need to purchase it once, because believe me, this thing lasts a lifetime. This one, for example, is about it's from 1940, so we're talking 80 years old, and as you can see, it's as good as new. I mean, this is not going to break. This is just meant to last an absolute lifetime. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video on the iron horseshoe exerciser. I hope you've learned what it's for, its purpose. Its purpose, as I've mentioned earlier, is for the development of finger, hand, wrist, arm and shoulder strength, for strength feats, arm wrestling, etc. Again, this is the Golden Era Bookworm. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't, and leave me your comments. Thank you for watching. If you want to support my work, you can donate via PayPal or become a Patreon. And as I mentioned earlier, on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com, you'll find a course, the original course from George F. Jowett on using the iron horseshoe exerciser. Anyway, that's it for me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.